Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, how are you today?
I'm doing really well, Bryce. How are you?
Excellent. I'm kind of excited about today's episode. Not that I'm not excited about all of our episodes, but we've had some really fun episodes over the last little while. We've gotten some great feedback regarding our Bridgerton episode that came out a few weeks ago. And it's kind of made me think of, obviously, everybody watches the news and knows what's going on in the world. We've had it's just been like day after day of terrible news. And, today, as I roll out of bed and open up my work laptop while working from home here, I see that we get to chat about the movie Moana today. So things are looking up, don't you think?
I was really excited. We had this episode put into our schedule to talk about the March Madness winner, but we didn't know who it was going to be until there was a winner. And then as we saw, there were some characters that we had done episodes about recently, and we started thinking, what are we going to do? How is this going to work? And then in the end, it was Moana, and it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's, of course, if anybody here was following along our March Madness contest, of course, Moana ended up winning the title of Best Character. So out of all 64 characters that we had, I mean, I don't know where I would have ranked Moana out of that 64. She probably would be in the top half, but maybe towards kind of like the middle of the pack. So it was something that I never expected to see happen.
Yeah, it was quite exciting, and to have I don't know if it was an upset victory at the end, but it kept it going right until the last day of March Madness.
Yeah, and speaking of which, we want to thank everyone who voted, even if you only got to vote one time during it, or maybe you just listened to that episode of the podcast where we previewed it. But we ended up this year having over 43,000 votes, which was like, I think 10 or 15,000 more than last year. And so we just love that everybody participated, and we look forward to having March Madness again next year. Caroline, we already have to start thinking of what we're going to do to top ourselves again.
Yeah. We've got some good ideas, though, so stay tuned.
Yes. So as we talked about, today we're chatting about Moana, and we have a special guest joining us today. Caroline, I think you're like me in that you always love having first-time guests on the show. We have some great reoccurring staff members who do come back on the show quite a bit, but I'm always happy when we get to extend that invite to other EPLers across our system. So first, we want to welcome to the show today for the very first time. She works out of our Strathcona branch, Ashley Dotto. Ashley, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
We are doing well. Excited to have you on the show.
We had originally, I know that we had talked a little bit about going to have you on the Bridgerton episode. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. So I have to ask right now, circling back to our last episode with Bridgerton, obviously you're a huge fan, right?
Yeah. I'm a really, really big romance reader. So it's partially my fault because I hesitated when you put the call out, and Cassidy, friend of the pod, was poking me to be like, we have talked about this. You should go on the podcast. And I wasn't sure at first. And by the time I got to it, you'd already filled up. So, but that's okay. I listened to the podcast. Anna made some very bold claims about being the queen of romance at EPL, and I would definitely dispute that. There are many, many romance readers in EPL. I could definitely give her a run for her money. But no, it was a good episode.
Nice. Well, we're so happy to have you here today talking about Moana. And hopefully you're a fan of the movie, because if not, this will be a long episode.
I went back and watched it because I hadn't seen it since when it first came out on DVD, however long ago, 4 years ago-ish. But I went and watched it on the weekend and refreshed myself.
Nice.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm looking forward to that. But before we jump into what we always talk about on the show, which is our Overdue Find picks, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends at the Calgary Public Library who ran their own tournament of books in March. And this was a variation on a March Madness theme, books going head to head. It was a 3-week contest with 16 classic titles, and ultimately the Paper Bag Princess was the
Aw.
winner. And so
That's
that was
great.
fun. I was definitely there. I was voting along. I would put in my EPL votes first, usually on Instagram. I had a routine. And then I would switch over to Calgary and vote in their polls as well.
I feel like
Nice.
that's a similar type winner to ours. Same kind of like independent girl.
Mm-hmm.
Do
Yeah,
you know, Caroline, do you remember what it was up against in the finals?
I do. It was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed there was a few libraries doing March Madness. I think New York Public Library was doing their own version as well. And there was somebody else I can't think of off the top of my head. So I love that there's like this college basketball March Madness tournament. Now all of us libraries are getting in there like, hey, we can do this too and do it just as good, if not more exciting.
Absolutely. So just wanted to give a shout out to Calgary. Maybe next year we can do some cross promotion.
I think so. Yeah, we'll definitely have to work with them maybe next year. All right, so let's get into our recent overdue finds. Ashley, first time on the show, so let's start with you. What have you been enjoying lately?
So, okay, I was gonna pick a romance novel, but then I read something that came out fairly recently and was so excited about it that I like basically forced Cassidy to read it as well. My pick is a book called A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. She wrote like a dragon fantasy series a while ago, and then her last couple books have been retelling of fairy tales, very feminist versions. And this is a new series for her. It is an adult book, and it can be quite dark at the same time that it's very not funny, but irreverent at the same time. The main character is quite sarcastic and fun, but it's about school for teenagers who have magic, and they kind of get sucked into this school that lives in the void, and it's supposed to protect them, but it's also incredibly dangerous. And they basically live their lives in fear in this school of the magical creatures hunting them in this school, all the while trying to absorb as much and learn as much magic as they can before they graduate. Because the graduation ceremony, most of them don't make it out alive. And she builds this really complex world. The main character is a little bit unlikable. She has this destiny that she found out when she was really young that she's destined to be evil and kind of burn down their society. So the void keeps tossing her magic that's incredibly destructive, and she's trying really, really hard to be good, but also people naturally don't like her. So she's an outsider and she's kind of jaded because of that. And the first book in the series is her actually starting to make connections with people and figuring out kind of a way to make it through this school and get out the other side. And the author just builds a really, really interesting world, and she does it in a way that they're not throwing all the information at you at one time. And there are parts of this book where you're like, why would parents want their kids to come to this school? The chances are they're going to end up dead. But as soon as you start thinking that, she throws the answer at you, and it makes sense with the world she's built. So it's a slow build to a really big climax at the end, but very interesting.
How many books are in that series?
This is the first one.
Okay.
I get the feeling it's not going to be a long series, maybe a trilogy. I can't remember what I read the author said it was going to be. The second book's supposed to come out in the fall, and I'm very much looking forward to that. But at the moment, there's just the one. So.
I know that the answer is probably, Caroline, you'll have to read the book to find out. But I just want to ask, the creatures, the magical creatures that are roaming around trying to kill them, are they there on purpose, or is it just because the world is so dangerous?
It's slightly unclear. Okay. So the creatures are in the regular world as well, and supposedly living on the outside world with the adults and the rest of the community is more dangerous than them being in this school, because in their teenage years, the creatures are more attracted to them. because they have more of the life force that gives the magic or whatever, and the creatures are basically eating them to become powerful. But you kind of question that the whole time, and there's some politics in it too that you're like, oh, this makes sense for some of the magical people, but not others. And the main character is an outsider in more than one way. So in their society, she's an outsider as well as at the school itself. So yeah, it's really complicated, and it took me a while to figure out how to explain it without spoiling a whole bunch and just talking about it a lot. So
well, you had me at School for Magical Teenagers, so
It's not a teen book though.
No. Okay.
I mean, teens would be into it, but content-wise, it's pretty adult. It's borderline.
I was going to make a joke earlier in this episode that last week Bryce, you had to record content, a little warning that it got a bit spicy. And I was going to joke about how we don't have to worry about that today, but we just might.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
That would be a little odd, though. Like, can you imagine turning on this episode? You see the title is Moana. It's like, please be advised, today's episode. You'd be like, what? What's gonna happen in this episode? This is nuts.
Anything can happen.
I think we should just put a discretion warning ahead of every single episode from now on.
You never know where conversations will go, even about Moana.
That's right. Yeah. Caroline, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately?
I have been enjoying Collective, which is a Romanian documentary about corruption in their healthcare system. And I want you to stay with me because you talked earlier about the podcast being maybe a little bit escapist and lighter with everything that's going on. And Romanian documentary about corruption and political influence in their healthcare system might not be what you think you need, but it's actually a really interesting look at how politics and healthcare and journalism have kind of combined in Romania. It's the story of the victims of a fire at the Collective nightclub. And I didn't know a lot about the movie going into it other than it is nominated for 2 Oscars this year, Best Documentary and Best International Feature. And so I thought it was going to be about a fire, the fire and what happens there. And it starts there, but then it really quickly goes into the story of the victims who died on site, and 26 people died in the fire. But as the months passed, more and more of the victims started dying in the hospitals. And there were restrictions put in place about where they could be sent, and the hospitals were overwhelmed, but they weren't allowed to turn to outside help. And ultimately, they discovered that at least 13 of the victims that died in hospital were killed not because of their burns, but by bacteria, because the disinfectant they used had been diluted by the manufacturer to save money. So there are all of these press conferences where journalists are trying to get some answers, and people are talking about this and that, and there are all these figures in it, from the healthcare people to the political people, the disinfectant manufacturers, all of this going on. It's kind of like All the President's Men meets Contagion in watching it, but it's also real. And I think it's kind of a cathartic watch right now because it does ultimately have a hopeful feel to it.
So a couple of things. One, it sounds really good. Two, if any of the producers of this documentary are listening, Caroline's line about All the President's Men meets Contagion,
but
that
real.
Should be going on. That should be going on your poster and other promotional materials.
Yeah,
somebody who works in marketing, get that done.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking of what my meat was on that. But EPL has it. It's available. You can stream it on Hoopla, and you can watch it before this year's Oscars, which, when this episode comes out, will be Sunday, April 25th, this coming Sunday.
No, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Cool.
always up for finding new documentaries, Caroline, because my pick this week is also a documentary. Mine's a little bit older, probably about 12 or 13 years ago now, but a couple weeks ago, I really wish I would have seen this movie in the theaters, but I watched Godzilla versus Kong, and that word Kong just reminded me of one of my favorite all-time documentaries, and that is The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. So if you have not seen this documentary yet, we have it on DVD in our collection here at EPL, and I cannot recommend this enough. Like I said, it's one of my all-time favorites. It's a lighter documentary. Nothing against the documentary you just recommended, Caroline, because it's very important. But if you've never heard of this one, the documentary follows a man by the name of Steve Wiebe, who sets out to set the world record for Donkey Kong. So we're talking about the old classic arcade game that was released in, I believe, the late 70s. So the only thing standing in Steve's way is a man who was once dubbed the video game player of the century, Billy Mitchell. So Steve and Billy could not be more opposite. The documentary does an amazing job of setting up this epic clash between these two gamers. It follows Steve along as he travels the country competing in all these like old school retro arcade tournaments where he's trying to set a new high score record for the game of Donkey Kong. Some of my favorite scenes are he's in his garage. He's got like his Donkey Kong arcade cabinet set up in there. And he's sitting there for hours. He's just trying to kind of basically get kind of the lay of the land to Donkey Kong and know where each of the little like characters are going to go so he doesn't get killed during the game. As somebody like myself who absolutely loves old school arcade games and video games in general, this was a fun one to watch because you do see him going around to these old arcades and playing these games. And I shouldn't say the character because he's a real person. Billy Mitchell, scenes with him are hilarious just because he's such, how do I word this properly? You just have to watch the documentary. Like, they're two totally opposite guys. Steve Wiebe is this former middle school science teacher, quiet, mild-mannered, and Billy is kind of rocking this mullet and he's got the wrist guard when he plays. And it's a great documentary. It's something fun that you can throw on like a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and you'll have a blast with it. So yeah, if you've never watched it, King of Kong, Fistful of Quarters, you'll really enjoy that one.
Did you watch the Netflix series that was about the creation of video games? And it was like 5 or 6 episodes that came out just before Christmas.
I know which one you're talking about, but yeah, I haven't watched it yet. Did you see it?
Yeah, it's really good, but you can't necessarily just have it on in the background because there's a lot of subtitles because a lot of people they're interviewing are Japanese. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, it's really interesting.
Cool. Yeah, that's been on my list forever to watch, and I'll have to check that out. Caroline, when I first started talking about that movie, you were kind of nodding your head. I assume you've seen it and are a fan of it?
Yeah, as soon as you said Kong, I knew exactly what you were talking about and got really excited because it is, and that's a subgenre of documentary that I really like, the like intense fan world of something. And it doesn't need to be just necessarily like pop culture, video game, or other things, but just people who are extremely into a world that exists in our world, but is also its own environment. And the movies that take you into it and show you a glimpse of that are documentaries that I really love.
We Are the Champions was like that.
Oh, which one's that?
It's on Netflix. Each episode is a different strange competition. Like there's one on hot pepper eating, another on dog dancing. There's a yo-yoing competition thing, and it's these people who are really, really intense about this thing that you did not even know existed. And yeah, it's really interesting. Same kind of feel.
Lots of recommendations for everyone this week.
Yeah.
That's what we do. That's what we do in libraries.
So let's get in and talking about Moana. Bryce, on the last episode, we made a big deal about how you had the recurring segment of interesting facts. And then this week I was putting together the outline and I scooped you. I stole the segment from you. So now I'm building up a lot of pressure, but I was just so excited to talk about Moana.
I saw that and I got the notes for this episode, and I saw Caroline shares interesting facts, and all I could think of to myself was, good for you, Caroline. Good for you.
It's time. I'm ready.
Time. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't know how interesting. I feel like it gets maybe more or less. I don't know. But we'll set the scene. Moana was released in 2016 by Walt Disney Pictures, and it was the 56th Disney animated feature movie that has come out. The movie is about Moana, daughter of the chief of Motunui, who is chosen by the ocean to reunite a mystical relic with the goddess Te Fiti. In order to save her island, Moana sets sail in search of Maui, a legendary demigod, and the person who stole the relic in the first place. She needs to get him to return it so her island will be saved. It was nominated for 2 Oscars, including animated feature, but lost to Zootopia in a rare case where Disney had more than one big release coming out that year. The majority of the film's cast are of Polynesian heritage, including Auli'i Cravalho as Moana, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Maui. Disney intended the soundtrack to combine traditional South Pacific culture with pop and Broadway styles, which led to hiring Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote the music for Moana while he was developing Hamilton, which then went on to Broadway history. And in order to be crowned the EPL March Madness winner, Moana faced off against Dr. Emmett Brown, John Wick, Indiana Jones, Darth Vader, Black Panther, and finally David Rose.
That's quite the path to victory.
Right?
Yeah.
Like no one could
Those are some
accuse
tough
her
men.
of just like sliding through on these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly, it's funny because in that first round matchup, against Doc Brown, I was like, I could see this going either way. Like when Moana beat Doc Brown, I was not surprised. But when it was up against John Wick, I was like, I think John Wick's got this one. But no, like this movie speaks to a lot of people. It was really cool to see it be so popular.
Yeah. So when did you first watch Moana? Ashley, you mentioned you saw it around the time that it first came out.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of impetus to go see Disney movies in theater because I don't have any kids or any young kids around me, or at that time I didn't, who I'd go with. So often these things I wait till it's on DVD and I get it from the library. So that was the path for that. And it probably didn't even have a huge holds list at the time. So probably a few months after it came out on DVD. But yeah, I remember watching it at a time and thinking, oh, that was really good. And I really like the characters, but it maybe didn't register with me the same way that it did for like a girl around that age. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bryce, had you seen the movie before?
Yes. So I originally first saw it. Cheryl is a huge fan of Disney movies. So we don't normally, depending on the movie, sometimes we will go, we don't have any kids, but sometimes we will go see them in theaters. This one we didn't, but this is one that I remember we did order on like video on demand when it first was available. And I remember thinking it was good. I didn't think it was like a fantastic Disney movie by any means at all. Like I was like, that was entertaining and kind of, I don't want to say forgettable, but because Cheryl's and Cheryl absolutely loved the movie. I've seen it probably, 5 or 6 times since then. Just Cheryl's been watching it on like Disney Plus the odd time or whatever, if she feels like something lighter. And so I watched it again the other night, and it's funny because the movie itself has grown on me the more I've seen it, and I definitely appreciate it more, I think, now versus when I originally watched it. It's a very entertaining movie, and when I think about it after, watching it again the other night, I'm not surprised that it won, even though it technically was, I guess, a little bit shocked that it beat David Rose in the final. But how about you, Caroline? Is this a movie that you had kind of seen before, or was this kind of like you're just discovering this one now?
Yeah, I only watched it for the first time recently after it won March Madness, and I knew that we were going to be doing this episode, so that's the eye that I kind of saw it through. But I don't really know why I didn't watch it, because I also have seen most Disney movies, but then there are gaps in terms of the ones I have and haven't seen. But then I'll pick it up again, and so sometimes I'm catching up with it. I don't know. I also just like going to the movies. I think I've talked about it on the podcast. It's one of the things I miss most about pandemic life is, just going and hanging out, having a theater full of people all reacting to the same scene. So I would have gone just because it was playing, but I don't really remember why, and watched it for the first time the other night. And it sounds kind of silly to make this point that a movie with Moana as the title character, it really is about her. It really is. She's such a strong character that carries the movie. Like, there's no way around it. I think she's probably almost in almost every scene in some way, and it made sense that if people were voting for character, that she is a particularly strong one.
Mm-hmm. I just love that character, like 15 years ago, especially since it's not based on any sort of real property or like fairy tale or whatever, would have been a boy, mm-hmm. right? Because there's nothing that says that character has to be a girl. There's no, I guess, societal gender things that indicate that it should be a girl, but it is, and she's strong and adventurous and determined, and when she's afraid, she faces her fears and she deals with it, and so good.
Yeah, it's funny because, watching it again the other night, the one thing that I never really paid much attention to it before, but, I'm watching it again through a little bit more of a critical lens, and that they don't once, like, obviously Moana is the princess of that island, but in other movies, I think it would have been like, oh, well, you're just a girl, like we need to find a king or something along those lines. But like Moana does not go there at all. It's just like, no, Moana is the princess of this island. She will rule it one day, and she's the strong figure. I think too, probably Ashley, as you mentioned, like had this movie come out 10, 15 years ago, yeah, Moana would have been a male character, or else maybe the character of Maui, like her and Maui would have been in love or something along those lines. But we don't go there in that movie, in Moana, which is great.
And it's a deceptively simple story, and I think it's a cleaner movie, and it works better because of it, right? That her motivations are just, she's not proving herself, she's just fulfilling her destiny, but even that's not her main motivation. She's just doing what's best for her people,
and which gives it real stakes. Like it's not a quest that she can give up on easily and just move on to the next thing, because she is tied to it. And that was really good. I think I was definitely, when I was watching it, there was no piece of it that was reading romance to me. And I think that's because I had done a little bit of the research for my interesting facts already. And so
they were interesting, by the way.
Thank you. I knew that the voice actress for Moana, Auli'i Cravalho, was a young girl. I think she was 16 when she was doing the recording for this. And then Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, as I will continually refer to him as, is an adult man. And so I think I had them in place, kind of, even though it wasn't them on screen, that I was just kind of seeing it as kind of a reluctant buddy comedy more than a path to romance.
And she reads younger, right? Like barely a teenager, or at least that was my perception of it. So I feel like it would have been super awkward if they had introduced, and Disney doesn't always do romance well. Sometimes they hit it, and sometimes it's like, no, that was weird and awkward. So it was nice that was not even a factor.
Yeah, we won't talk about how old the character of Ariel is in The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, and Pocahontas. I mean,
Yeah.
there are many, many problems with Pocahontas as a story, but also, like, in real life, she was, 13, 14?
Yeah. Caroline, you touched on it just kind of being this, like, buddy movie as they go on this quest. I kind of had jotted down for myself, like, this is a fun road movie. I love road trip movies, and this is like this ultimate quest, and they're going on this adventure together. And yeah, they don't always, Moana and Maui don't always get along, but in the end they work together to kind of meet their common goals. So it's just a fun movie all around.
And she's the one who figures it out.
Yes.
Right? Like, there's back and forth, and they both play a part, but ultimately it's this mortal, so not the god, but the mortal, who figures out and realizes the nuances of the situation.
Mm-hmm. So I have to ask, I have my own personal favorite character. I'll be shocked if anybody else has the same character. But Ashley, who was your favorite character in the movie? Who spoke to you the most?
I did love how sassy Moana was. That was fun. That character was played really well by the actress who did her, but I love her grandma. She was just the best. She's snarky and, like, pushes Moana, is on her side, but also will play the devil's advocate to get her to, like, make the right decision for herself and stand up for herself. And yeah, her grandma was just really fun.
Yeah, I really liked her as a character. You're right. I like how she prompted Moana and kind of made her make choices about things. There's a part later on in the movie where, I was just really excited to see the connection to the grandmother coming throughout the movie.
And those opening scenes with her telling the stories to the young Moana and the other kids and scaring them so badly, it was so funny.
Oh yeah.
It took me a moment to realize that they were all scared, because Moana was right in front and she's listening with, like, these giant eyes and is so engaged, and she wants to just get out there and sail herself, that it took me a moment to realize that that's because she's the outlier here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the grandmother was a favorite character for sure. I mean, Moana, absolutely. I think I might say the ocean.
Oh,
interesting.
Because I just loved the personality that was given to the water, and particularly every time Maui would, like, push Moana off the boat, and then the ocean would, like, bring her back immediately. That I found that very enjoyable as a running gag, and I just loved that the water did have a personality to it. So yeah, good characterization. Yeah, how about you, Bryce?
You know what? I am a huge fan of the chicken Hey Hey.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Look, Moana,
I want to hear why.
Moana and Maui and all the main characters are good. Sometimes what I find Disney does really well is they have the kind of little sidekick character, and the character tends to maybe steal some scenes that they're in because they're hilarious. Like, I'm thinking of, for example, Frozen. I wasn't really a huge fan of Frozen, but any scene that Olaf was in, the snowman, I was like, he's adorable. He's really funny. For this movie too, like I said, when I first watched it, I thought the movie was okay. And the one character that kept standing out to me was Hey Hey. Hey Hey, hilarious. Obviously, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it here. Hey Hey marches to the beat of his own drummer. Just, he's given food. He still can't do it right. I don't know if Hey Hey's blind or what, but he's just a funny side character that kept things lighter sometimes when they needed to be.
Yeah, it's true. He was definitely filling a role in the journey story of it. So maybe on my second watch through, I will be maybe more on board with the chicken.
Chicken Hey Hey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Telling you, all Disney movies, they always have this weird little secondary character that likes to steal scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes can like cut some of the drama, like just dramatic tension in a scene, whether it's scary or physical or something like that. Then you have, just maybe a visual gag or a slapstick joke that, there was even like the ocean sometimes would just like pick up Hey Hey and put him back in his little hold on the boat.
That's right. And then Hey Hey just keeps going back and forth within that hold. I just thought of too, another example of that is another underrated Disney movie was Tangled, which I think came out within a couple of years of this movie. And I thought of I think he's an iguana, Pascal, who's always hanging out with the main character from that movie as well. So Disney knows its little animal characters, and they speak to me.
I think they also, not that I mean this is an insult to you, Bryce, but they tend to speak to the like really young kids too. It's somewhat that they can kind of latch on to that's less subtle. And those tend to be the characters, aside from the princesses, that you see the character, the toys and stuff of.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think too of Cinderella is one where, for the most part, it's a very serious movie actually, but then we have the mice characters are there to kind of give a little bit of laughs sprinkled in, kind of maybe keep the kids and kids at heart, such as myself, invested in the movie.
I think of Gus Gus, who's one of the mice from Cinderella,
Oh,
all the time, because there's one of his like classic moments is I think he's trying to pick up, I'm going to say like either pieces of grain or kernels of corn, and he's trying to stack them up, and he's got so many and he's balancing them under his chin, and then he just like it topples and he drops them all. I think of that every single time I am in the library trying to carry too many things at once and just desperate to get my stack of books or DVDs to a table before I pull a Gus Gus and they just splatter everywhere.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yeah. Very relatable on a library podcast.
Well, and I think that's part of it too, is they tend to be slapsticky. That's a humor that a 3-year-old will get.
And Bryce.
And the rest of us.
Yeah.
I also loved Pua, the pet pig in the movie. I had this moment of, I think it might have been after we saw Hey Hey was on the boat with her, when I realized that Pua wasn't, and I was like, oh, I missed him. I liked him. But
yeah, my memory, he was on longer. Like he was part of the journey, but I realized he's not now.
Yeah, me too. When I was watching it again, because there's one part where Moana attempts to go out, and Poa's on the boat or on the raft with her, and then they almost drown, and then it's funny because if you'd asked me before I watched it again, it's like, is Poa there the whole time? I would say yes, yes he is, but no, it's just Hey Hey. Hey Hey can take over the animal part, no problem.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that Disney movies are known for is having a really great soundtrack to them. Moana was nominated for Best Animated Feature Oscar and Original Song for How Far I'll Go. What are some of your favorite musical moments from the movie? Ashley?
I was thinking about this, and I found the music is not as memorable as some of the other Disney movies. Maybe it's because I'm not a kid anymore listening to the soundtrack over and over again. But I did the song that Maui sings, even though The Rock's not the best singer, although I must say he wasn't terrible. It was super catchy, and the like studio version done by a real musician at the end of the movie that's playing over the credits really caught me, and I found myself singing it after to myself. I couldn't now. Like if you asked me to sing it now, I couldn't remember most of it. But at the time, it really caught me. Maybe it's the repetitiveness of it. I don't know.
Is that the You're Welcome one?
Yeah. Yes, yes, that is that one. I couldn't even
Yeah.
remember what it was about, to tell you the truth.
I really love with that there are a couple lines of dialogue that have been worked in that play around like the saying "you're welcome" at different points between Moana and Maui. So
Yeah.
I that to me was more memorable than his actual song, but it was fun.
hmm hmm
Ashley, I'm not sure if you know this, but longtime listeners of Overdue Finds know I am a pro wrestling fan.
Yes, I
And
caught that in some of the
yeah,
other.
so and the rock singing did not surprise me at all. And the reason I say that is because back in the late 90s when Rock was like full-time WWE, there would be like the odd segment where he'd break out a guitar in the back and start singing. I saw him at a live event in Calgary probably in the early 2000s, and after his match he sang like Heartbreak Hotel by Elvis. So yeah, The Rock is all about entertaining. So the fact that he was, doing the singing in this movie as a wrestling fan did not surprise me at
He's
all.
just a multi-talented guy.
He is, yeah.
True. Yeah. What about you, Bryce? What stuck out either on this watching or other ones that you've done?
Like most people anyway, the song that I remembered the most was How Far I'll Go. And I mean, if I'm picking my favorite music from that movie, that's definitely the one song I would go to. I think it's the most memorable by far. Somebody who's seen the movie a few times, Ashley, you're right. Like besides like How Far I'll Go and then You're Welcome, like for the most part, most of the songs, I hate to say it, are kind of forgettable. But upon watching this again the other night, I find the movie, it's good, but I find it to be, believe it or not, a little long. Like,
Yeah.
I find that there's stuff in this movie that can be cut out. One of those scenes, and it is important to the plot, so I get why it's there, but it's when they come across the large crab by the name of Tamatoa, and he's voiced by Jermaine Clement.
Yeah.
So he sings a song called Shiny, and it's one that I think normally, because the movie's dragging on a little bit, I find at this point, I'll be on my phone or looking at something else. But I was really paying attention to the movie. And I was like, you know what? Actually, I don't mind this song, Shiny. And it took a few listens for me to kind of get into it, but it's kind of a cool song. It's something that's totally different from what you hear through the other songs. I don't find there's as much of like a Polynesian kind of connection maybe as the other songs have, but yeah, it's kind of a good song. I was enjoying it the other night, but I don't know. Does anybody else agree with me that maybe the movie goes on just a little too long?
Yeah. You're right. That part is important in a way, but I feel like there could have been a way that they wrote around that piece, but then the movie would only be like an hour long. So yeah, but the song is good. Jermaine Clement is just a star.
Yeah, most people probably know him, of course, from Flight of the Conchords, or what's the other one called?
What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Caroline, what's your jam from that movie?
I feel kind of obvious about all of my answers with like, oh, my favorite character is Moana and my favorite song is How Far I'll Go. Guys, I promise I did watch this movie. But I really liked it. I liked the way that it was structured into the movie, and you could tell like it was drawing on Lin-Manuel Miranda's Broadway background with the number of times it would come back. And having songs that repeat or come up again in a different part of the movie, like that's pretty standard. That's been happening in Disney movies for ages. But the way that it was brought in different moments for different scenes, I think was just used really effectively here. I've been a couple days since I watched it, and today, I don't know if it's because I knew we were recording and it's been on my mind, but today is the day that I have it stuck in my head, and I just feel really triumphant. It's a great feeling. I love it. And I just love overall the way that it ties into some of the other songs about really exploring place and identity. And it's about like going and being and and all of these things that just really weave together really well. And yeah, I was ready to be like, oh, okay, here's the big song. And then it was like, Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
It is a good song.
I think as a score, like if you look at the music throughout the movie, like if you're I know there's soundtracks that are like individual songs, but then there's soundtracks that are like the score and how everything ties. And I think the movie's really successful that way. It's just some of it doesn't really stand out with those big numbers, like say Frozen, right?
Yeah.
You never stop and go, this music doesn't fit, right? Like it is very successful. It does. They did have I think he's Samoan, the one musician who wrote the score with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and it really does have a Polynesian feel to it. And there is some points where some of the performers are singing in, I'm not sure they ever specified what the language was, which Polynesian language it is, but they are performing not just in English, which is nice. It gives it a more authentic sound.
I know we're talking about music, but the one thing I just want to quickly touch on is how like absolutely like gorgeous this whole movie looks. Like, you know, especially from the, you know, the beginning scene, Ashley, as you were talking about with the grandma and little Moana's going down to the water, and just like, I mean, I know high definition TVs really help with this, but just the movie itself and everything where they're out on the water and on the island, like it looks absolutely beautiful. It's just, you know, even if you turn the sound off and you were just like watching it visually, it's quite remarkable.
I was thinking a lot about that. Growing up, one of my favorite Disney movies was The Little Mermaid. So
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot about the underwater shots in that movie to the ones in this movie, and it's just different. Or the way, you know, the way her hair moves, and comparing the lifelike qualities of the animation to what I grew up on in the 80s and 90s it was interesting to think about it like that.
Was this one combination hand drawn and computer animation? I know I was reading Tangled was. And I know Disney's done that a few times where rather than just go full digital, they'd still use that piece of hand drawn to give it a different feel. But I can't remember reading if that was the case with this one.
Yeah, I don't recall either. I did get like, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if either it was fully computer generated or if it was a combination of the two anyway. But yeah, I just know it looked really good.
Yeah.
So The Rock has said that he loved Aladdin when it first came out, and The Little Mermaid was one of the movies that inspired Lin-Manuel Miranda to write stories with songs. Are there other Disney movies that you've really enjoyed over the years, or maybe one that you would recommend to someone who just watched and enjoyed Moana? Caroline, what would you recommend?
I mean, I just mentioned that The Little Mermaid was kind of mine growing up. I watched and loved a lot of the late 80s, early 90s Disney movies. I think that ones that Moana was reminding me of were some of the later ones, like Brave. Saw a lot of similarities to the character of Merida from Brave to Moana, as well as Rapunzel in Tangled. And honestly, I think though, if somebody really liked Moana, I almost want to give them an underwater documentary in some ways, because it's the characters of like the ocean and being on the sea and the fish and everything. I think that might come out more in maybe some really high definition documentaries or things that explore maybe the Polynesian culture as well. But definitely, I think there are a lot of characters who are similar now to Moana.
Mm-hmm. Ashley, how about you?
I'm same generation as Caroline, so those like early 90s, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King. Beauty and the Beast was one that really stuck with me because I was that nerdy brunette, and also she's not a princess. I know they qualify her as a princess, but she's not technically. And it really annoys me that they force them into the princess mold now, because it's the whole thing with princesses and not having agency, and let's have some normal people do some things,
Yes.
right? Like Belle was just a normal girl. And I mean, there's some stuff that looking back, we're like, oh, it's not the greatest. The music was so good on Beauty and the Beast. was one of the ones I had the soundtrack for and just played over and over again. I think going with Caroline's theme of like not necessarily watching a movie if you liked Moana, I think learning more about Polynesian history and I found it really interesting that they specifically targeted this point in time. I was doing some research. Polynesians were kind of known for their colonizing all these islands and their navigating and the wayfinders who could keep whole paths on the ocean in their head, and they had to just stay awake all the time so that they knew where they were at all times. And there was a period, I guess, of over like 1,500 years where they just stopped for a while, and there's some speculation on why, but they don't really know why. And that before they ventured out again further into the Pacific and colonized like Hawaii and some of those further out islands. But it's just a fascinating history, and I don't know if there's more kind of fictional literature on it or movies or where you would even find that information outside of just like an adult history type course. But there's got to be something out there for kids, because this is a huge accomplishment that the Polynesian people made.
So probably about, this is maybe like 8 or 9 years ago now. I remember Cheryl and I, when we were in Hawaii, we did check out the Polynesian Cultural Center. I know can't go to Hawaii right now, but if you get a chance, I highly recommend checking out, because it does go into some of those different islands and the different cultures. And it was a really amazing experience and fun way to spend the day and learning about different cultures and everything. So yeah, if you're in Hawaii, next time you're in Hawaii, swing by the Polynesian Cultural Center. It's really good.
Is that your recommendation?
I do recommend going there. That is not necessarily my recommendation for this one, but I do like the idea, though, of recommending people to go check out, learn more about that culture. Anyway, as far as Disney movies go, probably something similar. I would go with Brave myself. I think that's a really good comparison, but just a totally different Disney movie. It was one of my favorite ones as a kid, and I still enjoy it to this day, is the animated Robin Hood that came out, I believe, in the 70s, I want to say. And I challenge anybody, by the way, to watch the opening credits of that movie and not smile, or have that song, that little whistling song, stuck in your head. Anybody who's seen the movie knows it, and it puts a smile on your face automatically just thinking about it. So it's a really fun movie. I can't really compare it to Moana, but if you're looking for a Disney movie, just something that's entertaining and light, and even like just your kids and yourself will enjoy watching at the same time, Robin Hood's always a good one.
Oh, I like that. So before we get to our roundtable questions, Bryce, can you let everyone know what we will be chatting about on our next episode, which will be coming out on Friday, May 7th?
Yeah, Caroline, there's been some great parents in pop culture. I'm thinking like maybe Uncle Phil, Lorelai Gilmore, and some not so good ones, like maybe Walter White from Breaking Bad. With Mother's Day coming up, we thought that it would be fun to take a look at some of the best and worst parents in pop culture. So joining us on this episode will be a couple of guests from our Clairview branch, Mike Eaton and Susan Chow. So tune in on that one on May 7th to find out who we personally pick to be the best and worst parents in pop culture. Caroline, I'm really looking forward to that episode. Start to think of some fictional parents. There's some really good examples out there.
I think we'll have some really good discussion on it. I think we might have people with different opinions on it. I'm already ready to take you on with this teaser about some of the ones you mentioned. So I think that we'll have a lot of fun talking about parents.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to do with Lorelai Gilmore?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I don't know if that's bad parent so much as terrible child.
I think it's complicated.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
To my defense, I did lump Lorelai in with the good parents. So that's, yeah. Okay. Well, we got a debate coming up here, the next episode. So stay tuned. We will be discussing Gilmore Girls.
We'll get into it then. So our first roundtable question, what would you like to see in the TV series adaptation of Moana, which is coming to Disney Plus in 2023? Ashley.
found this really interesting because I'm like, I don't know how you turn this into a TV series. I would like to see the focus still stay on Moana. I guess to make it a TV series, they'll have to expand the world quite a bit. But if it was like a monster of the day kind of thing where each episode they're, I don't know, discovering a new island or exploring a new place, I think that would be really interesting. But I'm interested to see what they do with that.
Bryce?
You're going to love my answer here, Caroline. I'm going to turn the series, well, not the whole series. I don't know what, it has to focus on Moana, first of all. But what I would like to see in every single episode is maybe a short cartoon, maybe at the very end, maybe it plays after the credits, and essentially it's Hey getting into a wacky adventure. It's like, think Looney Tunes. It's like 2 to 3 minutes long, and Hey-Hey's causing some trouble somewhere, and maybe inadvertently like causing a disaster or stopping one or that sort of thing. So I think that would be a fun way to end each episode. Would be like the little adventures of Hey. Caroline, how about you?
I could see that. Yeah, I could see that for sure. I want Moana to have a friend. I think that would really help with some storytelling. So a human friend for Moana. And this is maybe more of a one-off episode, but I would like to know what the grandmother was like when she was a child.
Ooh, yeah.
And gets up there because I could see her, like, I think in the story she is the chief's mother, and you know, he has grown up clearly with this deep understanding of his duty and his responsibility to the people and the community, and she seems, I totally understood how he could have developed that, and she would also have this kind of free-flowing personality, but I just like to see more of her. So that's my answer.
Yeah.
So our second roundtable question, coming back to the Disney princess issue. Moana is part of the official canon of Disney princesses, which I did a deep dive into to come up with these notes. So the question is, when they all get together, canonical princesses, who do you think she enjoys hanging out with the most?
I think Merida and Rapunzel. Yeah. Like a lot of the other ones are much more passive and less fun, really. Most Disney movies, the princess is not my favorite character. It's usually a villain, actually. They're just so much more interesting. A lot of the Disney princesses are kind of flat characters, especially in early days, or they are kind of meant to play second or help meet to the male character. So yeah, I think some of the more recent ones they'd have a lot more fun.
Bryce, what do you think?
I was torn on this one. So the original list you sent me, I was like, believe it or not, picked Ariel from The Little Mermaid, only because obviously Ariel's from the ocean. I just think they would maybe have a little bit in common with that part anyway. So I think Moana could help guide The Little Mermaid a little bit and be a good mentor for her, maybe. So, but after you sent that updated list yesterday, I would go with Merida from Brave. I think they would definitely get along quite well.
That is my answer as well. I think she connects with Ariel, and they definitely talk about their animal sidekicks. And then I think she and Merida like spur each other on to be more adventurous and really have a good time. But I think she gets along with all of them. I think that's when they hang out in their official Disney princess activities. And just for the record, canon Disney princesses are Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, Ariel, Belle, Jasmine, Pocahontas, Mulan, Tiana from Princess and the Frog, Rapunzel from Tangled, Merida from Brave, and most recently, Moana. So, fun fact, the characters from Frozen, not official Disney princesses.
Oh, but they're actually princesses, unlike some of the canon princesses.
After we're done recording here, I may have to ask about your sources on this one, because I also I thought I read somewhere, because Disney now owns like Star Wars, all those properties. I think Princess Leia is considered Disney princess now, but I could just be making that up, or maybe I misheard that somewhere.
No, I think we should look into this, and I think I should come back on the next episode and present my deeper dive into princess canon.
You have to cite your sources, everything.
Yeah.
The whole episode will be dedicated.
Surely some of the Marvel ones would be princesses.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have some work to do before we record next, Caroline.
Okay, I'll get my magnifying glass out. I don't know why that's what I'm gonna use, but I think it'll help. So thank you, Ashley, for joining us today. This has been lovely to talk about Moana with you. Is there anything coming up at EPL that you would like people to know about?
Yes. So we just started live virtual programming for early literacy again. So as we're recording it, it's the 14th of April, and this is the first week of it again. And Strathcona, my branch, is doing every second Tuesday morning. We're doing Sing, Sign, Laugh, and Learn. Sign up. They're so good. A lot of our staff haven't done programming in a long time. Our branch hasn't done any in over a year. And actually, we had one person on leave before our first closure last year, so she hasn't done any in 3 years. And this is why they took this job. They are really, really good programmers. They're really, really passionate about it, and they've missed it a lot. So as soon as they heard we were doing it, they were just like all over it. Super, super excited. So you can tell it's Strathcona when there's a brick background. We're using one of our interior lovely historical walls, and I got to watch part of the one that they did yesterday, and it's so good. So sign up. The other ones I'm sure are good too. The branches who are participating, same deal. They're all very excited to be doing it again. So I think 5 times a week or 6 times a week we're doing them, and you can look on our website to find out the exact time and register, because for the Zoom ones, you'll have to register ahead of time, and then you get sent a link.
Great. And we will have a link to our program listings in the item list for today's episode. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you're subscribed so that you automatically get all of our new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love getting reviews. And if you like the show, tell a friend about it.
Yeah, please do. And don't forget that, as Caroline mentioned, we will have a link to absolutely everything that we talked about in today's show notes. And if you want to share your favorite Moana memories, or maybe share some of your favorite Disney movies with us, you can email us at podcast@epl.ca, or hit us up on Twitter by using the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.